Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Blood Bowl 7's Death Zone edition. So Death Zone is dropping on Saturday, and inside it we've got finally got official Blood Bowl 7's rules from Games Workshop. Now this pitch is also coming out this weekend, which is the Games Workshop Blood Bowl 7's pitch. So realistically, everybody is going to be able to play Blood Bowl 7s, and you guys probably know it is my absolute favourite way to play Blood Bowl. You can get a game in 45 minutes. It's fantastic. I love it. We've got 2 seasons of Blood Bowl 7's series, basically. 7 Super Series. Go have a look. One's got regular teams, one's got fun teams from Fumble. It is using the old rules, but we've got new rules now. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the new rules for Blood Bowl 7s. Now, before we get into it, I thought we'd just give a quick summary of the key changes for Blood Bowl 7. So if you're already a 7s fan, if you've been watching the channel for a while and you know all about 7s, then this kind of summarises where we are now Death Zone is dropping, technically. So key changes. The kickoff roll used to be a D8 and 2D6, take the lowest and scatter it that. That is gone. It is just D8, D6, standard rules apply. So you're going to have potentially more touchbacks, we'll come to that in a second, but kick kind of isn't as overpowered as it used to be now, so that's quite useful. Touchbacks and line of scrimmage. So the NAF did a great job reviewing Blood Bowl 7s and creating that rule set, and in it there were a couple of clarifications that really help out the play. Those are also gone, and we'll come to that again in a minute. The kickoff table is adjusted. We used to have a set Blood Bowl 7s table. Now the kickoff table is basically exactly the same as the core rules, which I really love. But there's a kind of adjustment to the amount of players. It used to be D6, I think, something like that in the 2020 rulebook. Now it's D3+1 for most things. Again, we'll come to that in a minute. Their injuries and apothecary rules have changed. There's a simplified injury table for both normal players and stunty players, and the way apothecaries have got slightly simpler, basically. Inducements and desperate measures. There's a new series of inducements, which is a table to roll on called Desperate Measures. That's 50k a pop, and the inducements that are available and the costs have changed. So we will go through a list of the available inducements for your team as well. And player advancements have drastically changed, but it gives a kind of simple version of Blood Bowl 7s. So Blood Bowl 7s is now simplified Blood Bowl 2020. It used to be its kind of own thing. I think a lot of that you can leave out. So if you are playing a Resurrection format, you're probably not going to worry about inducements because of the way Resurrection formats are built. Player advancement won't matter, and I've got an alternative for you anyway. Really, all that's going to affect you is the way injuries resolve on table, on the pitch, but again, that's not going to affect you if you're playing a tournament. And those kick-off and touchback changes are probably the only things that are going to impact you in a massive way, which is really good. So let's go delve. So if you're new to Blood Bowl 7s, there's a much smaller pitch. So Blood Bowl 7s is a quick play format for Blood Bowl with a smaller pitch and smaller teams. You'll be unsurprised to know that there are 7 players on the pitch from each team at any one point. Hence Blood Bowl 7s, maximum of 11 players on your roster, 7 players on the pitch. And when it comes to deployment and setup, there's a couple of special bits. So you will see there's a line here and a line here. Those are each team's line of scrimmage. So if you've played Blood Bowl before, you'll realise that the full game, you've got one line of scrimmage at the centre, you set up here, I set up here, and whoever gets the first turn murders the other. That is gone, which is fantastic. It's one of my favourite things about 7s. So you set 3 players up on your line of scrimmage, I set 3 players up on the line of scrimmage. We can each put up to 1 player in each wide zone. So kind of like Blood Bowl, but where there's less squares, you get less players, and everybody else has to go here, which is fine. So 1 in each wide zone max, at least 3 on your line of scrimmage, and the rest fill out there. Nobody can go here. This is no man's land. I think they call it midfield now, which is brilliant. So I set up here, you set up here, and then we kick off the ball. We'll come to that in a second because the clarification is a bit... it's not as clean as it used to be. What's the best thing to do here, Ben? Do we just talk through how it used to be? So, as the rules are written now, when you kick, the ball is going to be a touchback if it does not land in your opponent's half of the pitch. So if it goes off the pitch, if it lands on your half, it is a touchback. Now, the old Blood Bowl 7's rules had it that basically unless it landed in your zone, this was all okay. So with all the no man's land and all your opponent's third of the pitch was eligible to be receiving the kick. That rules adjustment is missing from the death zone rules. So we now have to go along with the ruling of the ball must land in your opponent's half. For now, I think that'll get FAQ'd, and we've got a suggestion to make at the end of the video as well because it makes it a bit more exciting. So the pitch is smaller, it is thinner essentially, but if you're playing with half the pitch, then it is also shorter. It's going to be 10 squares that long and 11 squares that long, which is a bit less than the 13 by 15 you'll have on a regular pitch. Now the cool thing is, about the way the line of scrimmage works, you still have 13 squares to the end zone. So 1-ton touchdown shouldn't be too difficult. Shouldn't be too easy, especially with the movement cap at 9 now, not 10. So even though the pitch is shorter, you still have the same amount of distance to go to score a touchdown, which is 13 squares, which is really good. So I think we've covered everything from the pitch. If you get surfed, you get surfed. You've got to set up 3 guys on the line of scrimmage, up to 1 in each wide zone, up to 7 on the pitch, and then kick off the ball. So Blood Bowl 7s gets its name from having 7 players on the pitch. So building your team, let's have a look at team building rules for Blood Bowl 7s. Players, there is a minimum and maximum. So minimum of 7, maximum of 11. And you are building your team using this 600k budget. So you kind of have less money to build your team with, but the team needs to be smaller. It works perfectly. We've looked at 7's rosters for every race in Blood Bowl, including the expanded ones from the Teams of Legend PDF and the NAF expanded teams as well. And the builds are great. There are so many to choose from. And the key is this here. So you can have 7 players to 11 players, but a maximum of 4 of them can be positionals, which means only 4 players on your team can be something other than one of your linemen. So regardless of what team you've got, you will have a lineman positional. It's the 0 to 12, 0 to 16 kind of player. So it's human lineman, orc lineman, dwarf blocker lineman. Most of them are called linemen, which makes it really easy. So the majority of the team is going to be that. You can have up to 4 other players though, and the amount of those players doesn't change from your roster. So if you're a Wood Elf player, you can have up to 0 to 2 War Dancers. Basically 0 to 2 of your 0 to 4 positionals can be War Dancers. If you are a Skaven player, you can have up to 4 Gutter Runners, but if you take 4 Gutter Runners, you can't take anybody else except linemen. The other change here is that rerolls, you can now take 0 to 6, which makes sense instead of 0 to 8, but they are twice the cost. So if your rerolls are 50k, when you're buying them in 7s, they count as 100k. They are doubled. Basically, 7s is like a semi-professional league. The team training, the players, they're not so good, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, if you are running a league in 7s, the rule has changed. You now can no longer buy additional rerolls as your team progresses. So if you want rerolls and you're playing a full-blown 7s league, you're going to have to buy those rerolls early. Quite frankly, you probably weren't going to be able to save up 140k for a reroll anyway in a 7s league, so I don't think it matters all that much, but bear in mind. A couple of other adjustments to the team as well. You can take 0 to 3 assistant coaches at 20k a pop, 0 to 6 cheerleaders at 20k a pop, and Apothecary at 80k a pop, and 0 to 5 dedicated fans at 20k. So this is all basically doubled in cost with the exception of the Apothecary, which has gone up by 30k. So if you're going to look at some of the Blood Bowl 7's rosters we've got, the Apothecary will be more expensive now. I kind of get it. I don't think it adds a huge amount, but that has changed. And I did say we'd look through the inducements. We'll go through these really quickly. Bribes stayed the same, so if you are bribery and corruption basic team, so goblins, black orcs, stuff like that, you get half price bribes. Otherwise they're 100k each and you get 0 to 3. Extra team training, so the inducement for reroll is now 150k. So these inducements are in place for if you are running a standard 7s league. Not a speed league, not a resurrection league, just a standard 7s league. These are the inducements you can get. 30k and a cheerleader, 30k an assistant coach, 50k Bloodweiser kegs, 50k desperate measures. Now these ones here have got a really cool table in the Blood Bowl 7's rule set. Basically you pay 50k and then you get to roll on this table and get a bonus. I'm not going to go through the table, I'm not going to go through the prayers to Nuffle either. I'll let you read through those because they're really good fun. Whether you're going to use them all that often, I don't know. They can be quite good, but random is random. Special play inducements, so those are the cards, 100k. Basically, those are the first set of inducements. Wandering Apothecaries are still 100k. Only teams that can take an Apothecary can take a Wandering Apothecary. Mortuary Assistant, 100k for Sylvanian teams only. Plague Doctors, 100k for Favoured of Nurgle only. Mercenaries. So Mercenaries have changed in this rulebook as well. You can either, depending on the type of league, have the standard mercenaries as inducements from the rulebook, or you can have 0 to 3 mercenaries from the Death Zone book. Now, they are really interesting, and you will see videos crop up, multiple videos about those, because of the amount of choice you get from them. It's pretty cool, but it is incredibly overwhelming. I think I had to plan out 48 slides to go through all the information, and I have yet to build a spreadsheet for it, but it'll come soon enough. So, Mercenaries and the Halfling Master Chef, 300k for everybody who isn't Halfling Thimble Cup. They still get it for 100. So I did say that the kickoff table had a few changes as well. It basically uses the Blood Bowl 2020 kickoff table with a few adjustments. So number 3, timeout, what used to be called a riot. Basically, if it's turn 1, 2 or 3, you lose a turn, as in your clock moves forward. So if it's turn 3 and you get a timeout, it becomes turn 4. If it is already turn 4, 5 or 6, you gain a turn, as in your clock goes back. So if it's turn 4, you get a timeout, it becomes turn 3 and you get an extra turn for that half. Solid defense, which used to be perfect defense, is D3+1 players can redeploy. D3+1 unmarked players can redeploy into a legal format. Now, that's not going to be massive when it comes to 7s because you've got that no man's land. So that's a bit of a nothing defense, but it can be useful. I don't think it's going to be massively impactful. Cheering Fans uses the Blood Bowl 7's prayer to Nuffle table, which is slightly different to the regular one. Quick Snap is D3+1 open players, and the Blitz is also D3+1 open players. Now, this is still going to be quite impactful. However, it is much better for D3+1 players than all 7, for example. So, kickoff table changes, actually, they're pretty much in line with the Blood Bowl 2020 game, which is really important when it comes to 7s. None of them are massively impactful. Yeah, I think overall this is a pretty good win here. Now, the injury tables are slightly different for Blood Bowl 7 as well. So, instead of rolling a 10 plus and then rolling on the injury table, casualty table, to find out what broken on your opponent, it's now been simplified. So you roll 2d6, 2 to 7 is stunned, 8 to 9 is knocked out. That's exactly normal. Then it differentiates ever so slightly. 10 is badly hurt, 11 is missed next game, and 12 is dead. So it kind of conglomerates a bunch of results. Your players are kind of more likely to die, but realistically what that means is that they had a career-ending injury. So it's not necessarily that they have died, it means they've broken their leg and they're now just so useless they're not going to be playing Blood Bowl ever again. They are being forced into retirement, essentially. Makes it a little bit quicker for Blood Bowl 7s. I actually wouldn't recommend using this injury table. I think use the standard one from Blood Bowl 2020 because it is just so satisfying to say I broke that guy's collarbone, and I think it's a pretty useful element to the game. Although I guess having those stat decreases is less useful than just being dead. I don't know, it's up to you, your mileage may vary. And stunties, 7-8 knocked out and 9 to 10 badly hurt. So again, exactly the same as the regular game. But something that is slightly different is the Apothecary. So if your dude gets knocked out and you use an Apothecary, if he's on the pitch, he stays on the pitch stunned. If he's not on the pitch, as in he got surfed, he is put into reserves. That player is put into reserves. If there is a casualty, if a player is casualtied, you roll a dice. On a 4+, they go into reserves. On a 1 to 3, nothing happens. So no re-rolling the effect and choosing or anything like that. It is very simply 4+, they're fine and you can deploy them on the next drive. 1 to 3, you are out of luck. Now, they have got some player advancement rules when it comes to 7s. And I think you'll all know what my take is when it comes to Blood Bowl 7s. It's difficult to use the standard system when it comes to SPPs because what you end up doing is end up with some teams, like the Edge teams, getting a lot of SPP really early on and just skyrocketing ahead in 7s, and that's not a lot of fun. When we did 7 Super Series, the first one, we did an incremental skill growth basically, which they got a skill after each game. You picked a player and it got a skill, and I really like the way that I expanded the teams. It created a narrative. They've gone with something very similar, which I really like. So after a match, you have 2 choices for your team. You can choose a player, to get a random primary skill, or you can roll randomly on your team, ignoring the dead people, and they will get a random secondary skill. The whole point here is that Games Workshop want us to run 7s and have it be a kind of, you have to make do with what you've got if you're a 7s coach. I kind of like that, it's thematic, but I'm personally like the choose one. I just think it's easier, you kind of get to test more things out. However, from a thematic point of view, and if you're going to play a casual 7s league, then getting to choose a dude and roll a random primary can be quite fun. Or if you want to take a doubles, you can just roll. It is going to be garbage sometimes, but it is going to lead to some really interesting games where you've got some random skills on some random players, and that's quite cool. The way the team value adjusts, for the first primary skill a player gets, it goes up 10k, and for the second and subsequent primary skills, they go up 20k. So a player with 2 primary skills will be 30k plus. If they've got a secondary, their first secondary skill costs 20k, and their second plus secondary skill costs 30k. So 1 primary, 1 secondary is 30k. It's really simple. It's fine. It's fine, to be honest with you. But after each match, your good players can get drafted into the big leagues. Now, this is a rule that harkens back to some of the earliest 7s rules, I think. So, at the end of a game, you roll a dice for each player that has 1 or more additional skills. If you roll equal to or under the amount of... I've done that wrong. Equal to or under the amount of skills additionally they've got. So if a player has got 2 additional skills and you roll a 3+, they're fine. If you don't roll a 3+, they are gone. They quit immediately and leave your team. So it really does represent the thematic element of 7s, which are these guys are amateur pros and they are trying to get into the big leagues. And the more skills they get, the more chance they're going to leave. And it does make a kind of internal balancing factor for 7s. It's thematic, it is random, and it's very Games Workshop. And because it's very Games Workshop, there's a couple of bits of the rules that are not as well refined as what we see from the community, because you know what the community is like. They will question everything all of the time. We like to take part in that. So we've got a couple of really big questions coming out of this 7s pack. One is touchbacks. So the standard rules say if the ball goes outside of your opponent's half, okay, if it goes off the pitch, from the sides, from the front, or into your own half, it is a touchback. Classic 7s has that midfield point. Now, it's always been, I think, or at least it has been for the many years we've been playing, that midfield zone is eligible to receive the kick. So we would suggest, if you get stuck or don't want to run with the rules as written, is that anything in the midfield is not a touchback. So you can kick it right close to your line of scrimmage, and if it lands there, you're fine. If it goes over the line of scrimmage into your zone or outside the pitch, then it's a touchback. The second one here is kind of a two-part, which is crossing the line of scrimmage. The way the rules work for on the ball is that if on the kickoff you basically get to move 3 squares and it cannot go over the path. There we go. Additionally, during each start of drive sequence after step 2 but before step 3, guys, one open player with this skill on the receiving team may move up to 3 squares. This skill may not be used if a touchback is caused and does not allow the player to cross into their opponent's half of the pitch. Okay, that seems pretty sensible. However, remember we looked at the pitch. It's 13 squares from your line of scrimmage to their end zone. If you get to wander 3 squares into the open, regardless of where that ball is going, if your opponent kicks the ball into your sweet spot and it's going to land amongst your players, you still get to wander 3 squares over the line. And what that does mean is you're going to end up with that skill becoming a 1-turn touchdown bomb for any movement 8 player plus. War Dancer, Gutter Runner, Skink. This makes Lizardman pretty powerful. And it also, I mean, all you need to do is get Sprint on a Chameleon Skink, and it is going to be 1-turn touchdowning as well. And you've got pretty good agility on those teams. Interesting. So we would say, I would recommend that you stick with the old school NAF ruling, which is on the ball, cannot be used to cross the line of scrimmage. It just stops every game. It just stops those agility teams from having an unnecessary advantage. It is an amateur pro league. We shouldn't see people dominating with 1-turn touchdowns. And on that, high kick. The ruling of the high kick result on the kickoff table is you may move a player under the spot of the ball. If the ball is landing beyond your line of scrimmage, and that player can move to that point on the ball, then we can end up being, you know, what do we say, 10 or less potentially squares away from, again, a one-turn touchdown. So the suggested ruling here would be high kick cannot result in your player being ahead of your line of scrimmage. These are a couple of things that we saw, and when we did a draft set for Blood Bowl 2020, we made sure that this was all in there as well. Now, rules as written, you can kick the ball up to the halfway line, that's fine, but when you're playing against lizards who've got on the ball, you're going to find that those chameleon skinks end up being real close into the opponent's half, and the high kick result is going to result in gutter runners, war dancers and things like that being in the middle of the pitch if that ball lands. And that is, I think, a little bit counterintuitive as to the feel of sevens, and from a competitive point of view, makes me a bit nervous. Okay, so final thoughts for Blood Bowl 7's Death Zone version. It is amazing that we've got 7s that is official. It is amazing that Games Workshop is producing these cardboard pitches. This is fantastic stuff. Blood Bowl 7's has been presented as a league version in this rule set, and I think that's probably fine too. If you're playing a friendly league with players, with casual, I think if you're playing a casual league, then these rules work really well. And I'm fully behind that, because you're going to end up with craziness. You're going to end up with those grudge matches and inducements and things are going to get out of hand. And that is kind of a really good way to condense the Blood Bowl experience. And Blood Bowl 7's is a condensed Blood Bowl experience. It can get out of hand, and it does in standard Blood Bowl, but with 7s you're playing more games potentially, or at least the impact is more. If you lose a dude for 7s, that's a bigger chunk of your team gone. And if somebody else has got 3 players with extra skills, that's a chunk of their team that are skilled up. I like the random draft thing, but guaranteed if you play League using these rules, you're going to end up playing against somebody's gutter runner who's got 3 skills, and no one wants to draft them, and it just seems unfair because your dwarf blocker gets a skill and then he's gone. It's tough. So the great thing is 7s is there. There's a couple of tweaks from a rules point of view, and if you're planning on playing a resurrection version, I think you'll have no problems at all. If you're playing a tournament, you will have no problems at all. And what we're going to do probably in the next week or so is release our 7 Super Series rule set for the 2027's edition, which is basically how we will do our YouTube series, and a really good way to keep to kind of make an expansion league with a bit more constructed element, to have it kind of mirror 2020 a bit more, but also be more of a tournament basis. The whole idea being is you can play a 5 to 8 game season exponentially, build character, and have it reasonably balanced without that wild swinginess, and I think that's really important for competitive Blood Bowl. But 7s in this format, and League as it is not a competitive game. The way Games Workshop runs Blood Bowl, it is a narrative game. It is all about the narrative, it's all about the story, and creating a single match in an unlimited universe. We like to play competitive as players, so we are going to offer you a Blood Bowl 7's competitive experience, at least a bit more of a tight one, halfway between League and tournament. Because Blood Bowl 7's League is written in Death Zones, it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun, but it is going to be irrational. But hey, that's Blood Bowl. Anyway guys, let me know what you think of the Death Zone rules. I am buzzed. This book is just full of joy, and you're going to see a ton of videos from us going through all the great stuff in there. And yeah, I'm really impressed. But we're going to disappear, and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the show even further, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Or come and join us in our Patreon, link below, where you get early access to our content and monthly competitions. See you later.